Okay. So, do you remember what we have been studying in our last class? Today we are supposed to go through the classification of virtue, right? How sīla is classified into different categories and why, right? But do you remember what we have studied last week? We have started with the definition of virtue, right? And the significance of practicing virtue. How virtue is defined? Do you remember? And yeah, especially with this two factors, virtue is defined: virtue as volition and virtue as consciousness concomitant. Why it is defined as volition? In what sense? Yeah, abstaining from killing living things and so on. That means it includes the other precepts as well, okay, in it. So with volition present in your thought, if you carry out actions such as killing, stealing and so on, that is against the virtue, okay. So but if you avoid being engaged in such activities, that is defined as virtue, okay. So it is the states beginning with volition present in one who abstains from killing living things and so on, or in one who fulfills the practice of duties. One is abstaining from engaging in the activities of killing and so on. The other is fulfilling the practice and duties, right? So these duties could be as a lay person or as a novice, as a monk, whatever duties you have to protect, you have to preserve, you have to do that with volition being present, right? Developing wholesome qualities, beautiful qualities in your mind. But then we came into study this definition of virtue found in the Visuddhimagga-01 that says that there is virtue as volition, there is virtue as consciousness concomitant, there is virtue as restraint, and there is virtue as non-transgression, right? So virtue is defined with these four qualities, four aspects. It is not just virtue as volition, but also virtue as consciousness concomitant, as restraint, as non-transgression. In four different sense, virtue is defined. And then we studied the further explanation of each different aspect, right? The first one is the one that is mentioned above. And how virtue as consciousness concomitant is defined. It is the abstinence in one who abstains from killing living things and so on. So it is the quality of abstaining, right? Abstaining is an action. Abstinence, it is the quality of abstaining, right? And then we came to know that these two aspects, virtuous volition and virtuous consciousness concomitant, or mental concomitant, you can also say mental concomitant. In Abhidhammic term, they are called chitta and chetasika. Chetana, actually, chetana is the word for volition, right? Chetasika is defined as mental concomitants. Mental concomitants. Okay? So when looking at these two terms with the 10 factors, 10 course of action, Dasa Kammapatha, 10 course of action. You remember the 10 courses of action? Right? Killing, stealing, lying, harsh speech, divisive speech, and then Sampapalapa, gossip, and 3 mental factors, right? So among these 10 courses of action, it says that the first 7 come under the first one, right? Virtuous volition, and the remaining 3 come under virtuous consciousness concomitant, right? What is virtuous restraint? So virtuous restraint is explained in 5 different ways. There are Patimukha rule for monastics that the monastic member has to, abide by. And then there are restraint by mindfulness. You practice this quality of restraint, Sangvara, by being established in mindfulness, being mindful. Restraint by knowledge, restraint by patience, restraint by energy. So restraint is defined in these 5 different ways. What is virtuous non-transgression? Whatever vows or whatever precepts you take up to practice, you do not break them. You do not break the rule. You try as much as possible to preserve them, to maintain your vow and your determination. That is virtuous non-transgression. Non-transgression. You do not transgress, you do not break the precepts. Okay, then we came to know why virtue is so called. What does it do that it is called virtue? On what basis it is called virtue? And we came to know about 2 factors especially. One is coordinating, samadhana, the other is upholding, right? Upadharana, right? But generally, virtue is understood in the sense of composing, sīla. And it is quite clear from the description of, the virtues that are mentioned in different Buddhist texts, that when you do not engage in unwholesome qualities and when you develop wholesome qualities, you become much more a composed person. You become a more mindful person, right? So that is understood from the description of these virtuous qualities. But if you look at this passage here, the composing is explained in terms of coordinating and upholding. Coordinating meaning non-inconsistency of bodily action. So you are consistent with your practice. with your upholding of the precepts. And upholding is, obviously, it means you uphold a certain rules, right? So one is taking the precepts, upholding the precepts. The other is maintaining it continuously, maintaining it without breaking. It is more like virtuous non-transgression. You make all the efforts to preserve the precepts. Okay. And then we came to study the characteristics, function, manifestation, and proximate cause of virtue. Yeah, composing is the main characteristic of virtue. Yeah, so, and in this section, we studied that even though we have been studying this quality of virtue as one of the three factors in the Buddhist spiritual path, sīla, samadhi, panya, right? So first you have to be established in sīla, and then you proceed on to develop your mind, samadhi, and then you develop wisdom, right? So that is the sequence normally explained. But then it says that this virtue or this spiritual path could be explained in different ways. For example, with this pair of conscience and shame, hiri, ottappa, right? Conscience and shame. So what it says, now virtue, so say those who know, itself as purity will show, and for its proximate cause, they tell the pair, conscience and shame. Why do you preserve virtue? Because of conscience and shame, right? Those are explained to be the proximate cause of the practice of virtue. Hiri and ottappa. They are also called moral fear and moral shame. Moral fear and moral shame. And these all, functions when you have an understanding of what is morality, what is kamma, right? What is wholesome quality and what is unwholesome quality, right? What are the wholesome actions? What are unwholesome actions? Why certain actions are defined as wholesome and certain actions are defined as unwholesome. If you do not have this understanding, you cannot really carry out the practice, right? So there you have the role of right understanding. Okay. If somebody does not know what is good and bad, do you think he is going to have moral shame and moral fear? He is not aware of this birth or that, the next birth. He is not aware of heaven or hell. He is not aware that his actions would have consequence in his life. It could be in this life or next life. So if he is not aware of all these things, he would do whatever he liked to do, right? But unfortunately, even though one is not aware of the consequences of his action, it will definitely have result, right? It does not matter if somebody knows about the consequences or not, but the actions, his actions would have result, would have consequences. So anyhow, if he's engaged in evil actions, unwholesome actions, he would have to experience the result. What are the benefits of virtue? The first and foremost benefit of practicing virtue that we have discussed was non-remorse. Non-remorse, right? Non-regret or non-remorse. Because when you start to focus on your practice, your thoughts, your thought process, your physical behavior, when you start to observe your physical behavior, your thought process, when you reflect in your mind, all the thoughts, all the seeds of actions or all the impressions that are stored in your thought process, it could be of good actions or bad actions, all these will appear in your mind, once you start to meditate. All these thoughts will come up in your mind and you will be troubled by that, because all the bad actions that you have done, they will appear in your mind and you would identify them. I did this at this point of time, I did these bad things to this person and so on. So, and then you will be regretting, why did I do that? Because of these actions, they had to go through suffering and so on. So you will be deeply moved, deeply, in pain. And it will function as an obstruction for your progress. It will take a long time to overcome this mental state before you really focus on your meditation, before your mind become calm and composed. If your mind is not calm and composed, you cannot really progress in the practice. You see? So it is not that the purpose of meditation is just to make your mind calm, but you have to develop a certain amount of concentration to progress in the path. Because understanding the true nature of existence is not easy. Okay? Why we cannot really grasp the reality is because our mind is not pure, our mind is not really focused, it is not calm and composed. That is why we cannot really see what is real and we cannot really distinguish between what is real and what is unreal. But apart from non-remorse, there are other benefits that are mentioned, right? Especially 5 benefits. It says, one who is virtuous, possessed of virtue, comes into a large fortune as a consequence of diligence. Right? So if you are virtuous, as a result of your practicing virtue, you gain a lot of good fortunes in different, phases in your life, in different conditions. So this is a general statement with regard to the benefit of practicing virtue. The second benefit is said to be a fair name that is spread abroad. So if you are a virtuous man, if you are a good person, people will talk about you that, this person is very good, right? When you talk to him, he speaks nicely. When you go to his house, he treat you nicely, right? When you talk to him, he give you good advice. So that is a good person. So people would talk about such a person. In fact, how do we come to know about a master, for example, a great master living in a certain forest, in a certain country and so on? Because a few people go to practice under him and they say that, really if you want to engage in the practice, this is a good teacher, good guide. And then other people follow him, right? And people from different countries, different places come to meet such a person, isn't it? So that is said to be the second benefit. What is the third one? Yeah. So when you are possessed of virtue, when you are a virtuous person, when you enter in any assembly, so here there is a mention of Khatyas, Brahmins, householders, or ascetics, 4 different groups of people. But it could be any assembly. If you participate in any gathering, any assembly, you go there without fear, right? Or hesitation, because as you have not done anything wrong in your life, you did not do any harm to anyone, so you have nothing to worry about, nothing to fear, you see. And of course, for example, sometimes you have people who are envious of your status, who are jealous of your gain and so on. You are a good person, you did not do any harm to anyone, but still there could be people who are jealous of you, right? So they may plan to do something to defame you, right? But then there will be a lot of other people who know you very well, who know that you are a very good person, so they would come forward to protect you. You do not have to do anything, you see. So that is the third benefit of being virtuous. What is the fourth one? Yeah, dies unconfused, because he's a virtuous person. He knows himself that he did all the right things in life. So when dying also, he does not have to worry that, he will go to a wrong, bad destination and so on. He can be quite confident that, I lived my life beautifully with wholesome actions. I followed a right livelihood, right? So when dying, he will be calm and composed. You can find this description in Kalama Sutta as well. 4 assurances. If you remember, one of the assurance was that, if you live a good life, if you follow a wholesome way of living, if there is next life, certainly you are going to be born in good realm, in heaven. But if there is no next life, for example, but still you do not have to worry, because anyhow you led a very good life. What is the fifth one? Yeah. So if there is next life, you will reappear in a happy destiny. Okay. So these are said to be 5 benefits of practicing virtue or being virtuous. And then we have studied these virtues. These verses are kind of a summary of the discussions that is presented above. So the first verse says that if you really want to start your practice, if you really want to, proceed in the practice of Buddha's teaching, to progress in the, path to deliverance or liberation, virtue is the beginning point. Okay? Without virtue, a clansman find no footing in the dispensation. Virtue is the beginning point. One has to be fully established in virtue. And then there are some similes. So it says that Ganges, Yamuna, Sarabu, Saraswati, Achiravati, Mahi. So all these great rivers cannot wash out the stain. Stain means mala. Okay, mala, defilements. It is only your virtue or virtuous water that can wash out the stain in living things. Okay, so I think this is historical significance as well, because even if you even now if you look at the practice in India, it could be found in many other countries that people, to purify their mind, their actions, they go through a certain process. In India, for example, at a certain period of time, people go to take bath in the Ganges River, right? Still they do. So these rivers are considered to be, pure, and they at a certain point in time they go there, take bath, and they think that whatever bad thoughts they have been having and whatever bad actions they have been engaged, after taking a bath in these rivers, all their evil thoughts and evil actions are washed away. They become a pure person. But you would find that as soon as they return home, they would engage in quarrels and other bad activities. So so once with regard to this action, Buddha said that in that case, those fish and tortoise that are living in the river, they'd be more purified, isn't it? Because they are all the time living there. So you just go once in your lifetime, once in a year probably, to take a bath in the Ganges. But these living creatures who are living in these rivers, they are already there. So they'd be most purified. And you see that different different groups of people belonging to different faiths and different countries carry out similar kind of activities to wash away their defilements or stain, mala. But the Buddha's teaching is that you are your own guide, you are your own teacher. No one else can liberate you, no one else can give you a nibbanic freedom and so on. All these masters, including the Buddha, can show you the path only. Okay, so you have to walk on the path yourself. So Buddha teaches that each of us has to take up our own responsibility. Okay, it is not that I am having bad thoughts and being engaged in bad actions, and next morning when I go to chanting hall, I pay homage to the Buddha and I ask for forgiveness from the Buddha, right? So the Buddha that we have here is in statue form. It's not living Buddha, right? I think that, sometimes if you as a living person, he would shout at you and chase you away that you are a foolish person. Normally we find in some suttas, sometimes when some of the monks, they do not really understand the teaching and they ask different questions to the Buddha, or they listen to the Buddha, and then when they teach to others or talk to others, they explain the teaching in different ways, and when the Buddha come to know about it, he called them Moga Purisa, foolish person, foolish man, stupid fellow. So Buddha used to say that. So we find these words in the text. So if he was living, if you go to, you know, him and he ask for forgiveness for whatever wrong doing you have done, he would definitely say Moga Purisa, foolish man. Okay. Yeah, now this is about virtuous scent. So it says that the scent of a flower or whatever, you know, scents of cosmetics, you can have them only when the wind blows, you know, you can have the scent in the direction where the wind blows. But the virtuous scent can go even against the wind. So what does it really mean? What do you think it refers to?
The right, the right direction. Nothing can stop in every direction.
Yeah. I remember one incident, you know, in one place, there were many monks and novices and layperson who were living. There was one particular monk who was all the time engaged in meditation practice. He does not really talk to other people so much. He does his own actions, you know, when he needs some water, he goes and collect water from the kitchen or from the place where water is there. And sometimes some novice monks, some students go to help him sweep his room, clean up his room, and so on. There was another monk who was not at all engaged in meditation practice, you know, but in terms of age, he was quite senior. He entered into monastic quite late, you know. But this monk, he was jealous of this monk who was doing meditation all the time. So because people do not, you know, want to help this other monk, because actually he had some bad nature also. He would scold people, you know, and so on. And one day, this monk who was not very happy with the meditation monk, he was scolding the meditator monk, shouting at him, saying that, you know, you were all the time engaged in meditation and you do not participate in any other activities. People have to come and help you. That is not good. So you see, this person, if you look at this incident, this person, he really, from his heart, he really does not like the monk who is meditating. But when he wants to accuse him, he is actually praising him. If you notice, he's saying that you are all the time engaged in meditation. You are a lazy monk. You see, he's actually praising him, even though he does not like him, isn't it? So the same thing happened during the time of the Buddha as well. There was a monk from a Brahmin community. He entered into the Sangha and he was thinking that, you know, he would follow the teaching of the Buddha, and he found out that it is not so easy to follow the teaching of the Buddha. So he wanted to leave the Sangha, but he did not immediately leave. When he was still in the Sangha, but when he talked to people, he was speaking against the Buddha. He wanted to defame the Buddha. So whatever he was saying, he was actually praising the Buddha. Whatever he was saying to people that the Buddha does in his teaching, in his practice. So when Buddha came to know about it, Buddha said that he is a foolish person. He does not know that actually, you know, when he was trying to defame me, he was actually praising me. So if you are a really virtuous, even if somebody does not like you, if they want to defame you, they would have to speak about your virtue. So that is in a way going against the wind. You see, even though the wind is not, wind is blowing from one side, but it does. Those people who know about you, who like you, they would appreciate because of your virtuous practices. But those people who do not like you also would have to talk about your virtue, isn't it? In any case, that is interesting. Okay, the final step is entering into Nibbana, into the city of Nibbana. See, from samsara to Nibbana. So that is the final purpose or benefit of practicing virtue. That is the final goal. There are other explanations. Okay, so now today we are supposed to go through these sections, different types of virtue. Now, if you look at this explanation, you would find that the sīla or virtue is categorized into different types based on different characteristics. Okay, so more or less it is speaking about the same thing, but when you look at it from different perspective, you can actually present it differently. That is what it means. Okay, did you go through this section, Barbara? Venerable Chun, any question so far?
No, teacher.
What about Grace?
Thank you, teacher. I haven't.
You moved to a different place now?
Yeah.
Where are you? What is the name of this city that you are living in?
Province Xi'an and city city Xi'an. Yeah.
How far is this place from your previous place?
1,000. I'm not sure, but by aeroplane 3 hours.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very far away. But still within China, right?
Yeah, still in China.
Okay. Any question from you?